somebody that wants to completely transform who they are, you have to change your identity. I'm the smart guy, and that's how I thought of myself. And then the life slapped me around and I realized, oh wow, I'm really actually not that smart. I just grew up in a small town. I realized that I had been sort of taken as a default value intelligence. Maybe it was the family I grew up in or the movies I watched, I don't know. And then I realized, oh, I can actually change that. Not everybody values themselves for that. And so I could swap that out with something else. I want people to understand that those things that are just deeply within you that seem as if they are innate human qualities, challenge them all. A lot of what you value comes down to what you repeat. And so just repeating myself, I'm the learner, I'm the learner, I'm the learner, it began to be my identity, and then rewarding myself emotionally when I did that. Then it's like through that repetition cycle, it actually starts to be meaningful that you're the learner. And by the way, I was telling everybody, I'm the learner, I see myself as the learner, I'm the learner, I'm the learner. And because I was telling people, then I really felt the sense of congruence with wanting to act like the learner. And so when you say you're going to do something and you do it, you earn self-credibility. So now I've got this loop going. I said I was the learner, here I am reading this book, here I am being willing to admit when I'm wrong, seeking out knowledge, looking for disconfirming evidence. Like, I get to feel good about myself for that.
The biggest hack to stop caring about other people's opinions, to stop living other people's version of your life, and to start actually feeling happy and proud of yourself, the biggest hack to doing that is to figure out what you stand for, to figure out your single most important core value. I believe that everybody has a single most important core value. And when you figure that out, it gives you a lot more clarity, a lot more direction, a lot more confidence, and allows you to start to do things that you never thought were possible. All of a sudden, that idea that you've got of, oh my gosh, I could do this thing, but then never taking action on it, things start to happen for you because you have that clarity of value. So I wrote 2 books on this, Your One Word and Built to Serve, and we go through the process of figuring out your one word or your who. Who are you? What do you stand for? What is that single most important core value? One of my favorite activities that I go through, I call it the 5 essential questions, but the most important one there, I find usually, is asking people, who was your favorite teacher growing up and why? So if you've understood the concept of, hey, I need to have a core value, I need to know what I stand for, I'm tired of being on quicksand, I'm tired of living other people's version of my life, okay, great. How do I figure it out? Do I just pick one at random? Do I just read a book? Like, how do I actually figure out what I stand for? Well, asking yourself that question, who your favorite teacher growing up was and why, I think is critical. Think about it. You've had how many teachers in your life? Think about your school, elementary school, high school, university, if you went to a college, other teachers you've had lots of teachers growing up. And chances are, most of your teachers, if you walked past them on a street corner, you wouldn't recognize them. That's how little of an impact they've had on you. Think about your high school teachers. If they walked past you right now, you wouldn't know who they were because they had no impact. But there's always that one teacher that stood out. There's one teacher that stood out for you. Why? It wasn't because they taught you grade 8 math. It's because they made you feel different as a human. They gave you something more than just a subject matter they were teaching. And that gives you a clue. Why did you like that teacher? Gives you a clue as to who you are and what you want to spread into other people. So, quick example. My favorite teacher growing up was Madame Farr. Madame Farr was my grade 12 French teacher. And I didn't love her because she taught me French. I barely use French on a day-to-day basis. What she taught me was to believe in myself. I was a B and C student going into my last year of high school, and she would meet with me every week. Before school started, once a week, we'd sit down, we'd chat, we'd talk about life, we'd talk about school, we'd talk about where I was at, we'd talk about what was on my mind. And in those conversations, she made me feel like I could do more. That her belief in me created more belief in myself. And in that last year, I went from being a B and C student to straight 90s, straight A+. I was still the same guy. I still had the same ability and the same talent. You know, she wasn't passing me the answers to the test that I had. It was just that belief in me that she gave me that allowed me to go off and start to perform more. So I think that's the most important question you can ask. Another one you can look at is, what was your favorite movie growing up and why? What's your favorite movie of all time? Why? There's so many movies that you've watched. Most of them you don't remember, but there's one that sticks out, that really stands out for you in some way for some reason. My favorite movie is Seabiscuit. It's about this horse that is way too small. It's about this jockey that's way too big. It's about this owner that's bankrupt. And somehow they all find each other and start winning a whole bunch of races when they shouldn't be, you know? And it's based off of a true story, and it ended up lifting a nation. The people love this underdog story, and it's a story of belief. Same thing. It's a story of belief. We all, at least for me, I love the idea of being that Seabiscuit, or being the jockey, or being the owner, and helping not just each other believe in themselves, but also the nation, for the audience, for the fans, helping them believe in themselves. And so if you started asking those questions, if you started thinking about who are the people that make you come alive, that make you feel like you're a better person, or what are the resources, or what are the YouTube channels or Instagram accounts or books or podcasts or shows, what are the things that have made you come alive? What are the things that have made you feel like you could do more? And then next to each one, write down a couple of words. So your favorite teacher growing up, who was it? And then why? 3 words to explain why. Your favorite movie of all time, and then 3 words. Why? And what you'll find is, as you do this exercise, you'll see some similar patterns. You'll see some words pop off the page. You'll see that same word come up a couple times. That's your who. That's your single most important core value. That's what you still need more of in your life right now. And that's what you want to give to the world. The other great part about it is that will be with you for life. This isn't something that we want to change. This is who you are. This is your best version of you. At my core, I'm the best when I believe in myself. And my biggest problem is still, I need to believe in myself more to get to the next level. When you figure out your most important core value, your who, your one word, it's still what you need right now. My biggest challenge right now is that I don't believe in myself to hit the next level. And it's what you want to give to the people around you. If you're watching this, you're probably an entrepreneur. You want to give to the world. You want to have a big mission. You have a big message. But some people, like Nina, who was just here, she doesn't have a big message, but she wants to help the closest people to her. We all want to feel like what we do matters. We all want to feel like we're having an impact on people, whether the closest people to us or to the world. But we're stuck and we're lost and we need guidance. And if you feel like you have all these ideas, but you don't know how they all make sense, and you don't know that you feel like it could be something, but you don't know how to get there, there's not enough momentum happening, it's because you're not in touch with your single most important core value. Here's an example. If I'm struggling to do something, I'm struggling to get on stage to speak, I'm struggling to turn on the camera to make a video for you, I'm struggling to launch my next project, you know, I get an idea and then I say, oh, I can't do that. What do I need? At the end of the day, what do I really need? Like, what's the thing that's going to turn that idea into actual action? I need more belief. And so when I can catch myself procrastinating, finding excuses, saying no when I shouldn't be, I can quickly reverse it by saying, Evan, you need to believe more in yourself, because that's at the core of who I am. And when I can catch it, then it gives me the courage to go off and do it, to record the video, to get on stage, to launch that project, to say yes, to say yes, to say yes. I think of Alex, who helps me run Toronto Dance Salsa. His who is belong. He needs to belong more with himself, and he needs to spread more belong to the world. And whenever he's not happy, and whenever he's not following through, and whenever he's not hitting his goals and doing the work, it's because he doesn't feel like he belongs. Doesn't feel like he belongs to himself, and he doesn't feel like he's spreading belong to the world. If you are stuck, if you are going too slow, if you have all of this unrealized potential inside you, the thing that is missing is you not following through on who you say you want to be. You're not matching that potential. How you make it practical is to figure out your who. Because every time you come back to that and say, I just need more of X, I need more hope, I need more freedom, I need more belief, I need more belong, I need more love, I need more care for myself, and then to spread it to the world. And when you can feel that, when you can actually feel that, it'll dramatically change how you show up. All of a sudden now you're making progress where you weren't before. You're accomplishing more in a day than you were in a year. You've released the chains. You've given yourself wings. You've given yourself the permission to actually go off and do the scary thing that's inside you, because now you know who you are. Figure out your one word. Figure out your who. Watch your life change.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Does a negative mindset have more effects on mental health and the brain? And does it get easier to control your emotions if you try long enough? So first of all, yes, a negative mindset is going to have an overall impact on your mental health. So anxiety is the easiest one to talk about because I've experienced it, but I think depression is also going to be hugely affected by what you allow yourself to repeat. So one core mechanism of the brain is to understand that while we are a very active species that's meant to go out and explore and master our environment, there's a secondary evolutionary force pushing on us, which is that we also want to conserve calories to make sure that we survive a famine. So we have this dual competing thing of wanting to go out and do cool, hence the big dreams, and wanting to sit on the couch and eat a bag of potato chips. Hence why we procrastinate, why we feel lazy. And the way that the brain, as a physiological organ, has dealt with this dual impulse challenge over evolutionary timeframes is that it's a process called myelination. And what that does is it's wrapping fatty tissue around neurons that fire together at the same time frequently. So this is why they say neurons that fire together wire together. They are literally getting optimized for the efficient transmission of these signals across those synaptic gaps. And the reason that they do this is that it becomes easier from a caloric perspective to do those things. So now you've made whatever you repeat, whether it's something empowering or disempowering, whether it's something that makes you anxious or feel like you can do anything, it's going to make thinking those thoughts and feeling those feelings easier from a caloric perspective. It also begins to move it into what's called the default mode network. So the default mode network is responsible for anything that we'll call automatic thinking. If you've done something a bazillion times, you don't think about brushing your teeth, you just brush your teeth. You don't think about driving to work oftentimes. Certainly before the pandemic, you just drive to work. And there were times where you would show up at work and be like, whoa, I almost don't remember the journey getting here. And the reason is that what ends up happening is your cognition can be put onto basically something else. So you're thinking through, daydreaming, whatever. And the thing that you do in a repetitive way is just happening automatically, super efficiently. And it's a thing that happens to the brain where you can scan somebody and go, they're in the default mode network right now. And if worry, anxiety, panic, fear, stress, if that's what you're doing all the time, then that's what's going to be moved over, made calorically easier to do, moved into the default mode network so that by default, that's where you go. And this is where most people spend the majority of their lives, is living in that default mode network of these emotions that they've created, these very well-worn paths to looping around over and over, to feeling those feelings over and over. And so you can understand, since the body responds to your
the mental states that you're constantly in, that each of those mental states is characterized by hormonal and neurochemical states, and the body will have different long-term consequences based on what you're feeling. So for instance, if you are constantly stressed or constantly anxious, your cortisol levels are extraordinarily high. Cortisol levels begin to damage the elasticity of your blood vessels. Is one of the vectors of attack on your body. And so you don't want to stay in these chronically elevated levels because it deteriorates the integrity of the lining of your blood vessels. And this is the kind of thing that leads to stroke or coronary heart disease. So being incredibly thoughtful, not to loop on those things, which doesn't mean that there aren't bad things going on in your life, but it does mean that when you allow yourself to loop, 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 that there is this hormonal and chemical cascade as a response to that your body will have negative consequences to, or positive consequences if you're in a loving, calm state a lot. And that's the thing that becomes the default mode network. That becomes the easiest thing for you to think. And you're in this really calm and creative state a lot of times, then you're going to prolong your life.
There's a part in Fight Club, and the gift that I would like to give the world, if I had, which I did not, but if I had sat down and set my intention for, what do I want to convey? This is one of my top 5 things that I want to get across to people. If you really want to succeed, there's a moment in Fight Club where he puts his hand out, and the guy puts a caustic solution on the back of his hand, and it burns. And he tells him that he has to just leave it there, and he ends up holding his hand down so that he can't take it away at first because it hurts so badly. And then finally he releases, and the guy has the strength to leave his hand there and let it just burn. And what I'm saying is you have a mechanism in your mind called the psychological immune system. Its job is to get you to pull your hand away, to wash off the thing that burns, and hey, you're fine again. What I'm saying is if you want to be great, the burning sensation is you having to accept that you fucked something up, that you're not as good as you want to be, that there are people that are better than you, that you're not as far along in the journey as you want to be. And what you have to learn how to do, if you want to be great, you have to learn to let it burn. And even though your impulse is going to be to turn away from that, to not look at it, to soothe it by saying it's them, it's their fault, they fucked it up, I grew up in the wrong place, it's fine for them, they're wealthy. Whatever excuse you use to try to let yourself off the hook for not being where you want to be, instead of saying, actually, the power is the ability to let it burn. And one of my employees was just asking me yesterday, and he said, how do you not get overwhelmed? And I said, you want to know the God's honest truth? The second I feel that impulse, Brendan, I say to myself, you don't get overwhelmed. I'm not going to back down. I will not break. You cannot break me. Get that out of your head right now. And just interrupting that thought with an aggressive impulse of I'm gonna let it burn. Now, I'm not a moron, so I immediately go, hey, thank you, psychology, for letting me know that, there's a lot of things coming at me right now. So I'm gonna go meditate. But the way that I interrupt the thought is by reminding myself not to be weak.
Who's in control?
100%.
Who's in control? Is overwhelm in control, or are you in control?
They once gave me a list, it was 750,000 keywords, and I had to comb through it in an Excel spreadsheet and say either yes or no. That took days and days and days of mind-numbing yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
What do you mean 750,000
Because this was
words?
back in so we had words that did we want to advertise on? Do we want to advertise on these keywords? So you would buy a list of powerful keywords on Google, and this is all CPC stuff.
Got it.
So do we want to show up on these keywords, yes or no? Here's our business, you know what we're doing, what keywords would we want to show up on? And so I'd have to go and clean the list. There's no way, no AI to comb through it for us. So I would do that. So anything like that, where I just add value, add value, add value, and everyone starts gravitating towards the person who's always upbeat, great energy, and never says no, and is always asking how they can help. It is a formula that will win for all time. And so that was it. And I just threw that intensity at it, because every day I was I'm here to get rich. I'm here to get rich. And when I get rich, I'm going to go build my studio.
If you want to make a change, you have to change your vision of who you are. You have to begin telling yourself a different narrative. And the narrative you tell yourself about yourself is everything. And if you tell yourself that you're a scared, undereducated kid from Tacoma whose family has never accomplished anything, let me tell you what you will become. A scared, undereducated kid from Tacoma who never accomplishes anything, because that's what you believe. You tell yourself that story enough, and it will become real. But on the flip side, you could tell yourself a story of you're a learner. You learn faster than most people. You're willing to put in more work than most people. You're willing to read more books than most people. You're willing to spend an inhuman amount of time every day improving your mind simply by getting new ideas into the system. And that you will admit that you're wrong faster than anybody else, that you won't let your ego get in the way. And you tell yourself that story over and over and over. So when somebody comes and tells you how stupid you are, that you're just a dumb kid from Tacoma, you go, you're right, that's amazing. Thank you for pointing out that flaw, because now that I'm aware of it, I can improve it because I'm the learner. And once I switched my narrative to being the learner, it didn't matter where I started, it only mattered where I was trying to go. And as long as I had that clarity, then I could execute because I believed I could do anything I set my mind to without limitation.
When you look at somebody with money, especially when you don't have it, you admire them. And so you think, if I had money, I would admire myself. But it doesn't work like that. So once you get the money, the thing you thought would happen to yourself, the story about who you are, you think is going to change, and it doesn't. So that's when people become totally disillusioned. They think, if I have the Ferrari, I'll think differently about myself. If I have the house, I'll think differently about myself. Your insecurities are coming with you wherever you go. So if you think anything external is going to change that, the only thing that changes your insecurities, show up in the gym. Put in the effort, go to work, do the things, suffer in service of somebody else, do something to bring beautiful things to people that you love and care about, do something beautiful to bring something to somebody you've never even met. Those things will change your story.
For 8.5 years, I'm doing that. I am working 7 days a week, ignoring my wife. At about the 6.5 year mark, my wife pulls me aside and says, "You're now damaging our marriage, and I'm not willing to continue like this." So I was like, all right, something's got to give. And that forced me to really look and say, I'm profoundly unhappy, and showing up every day chasing money just isn't actually who I am. And I need to do something that makes me feel alive in the moment. So it ends up being a cool part of my story, but what I want people to know is when the following thing happened, I was awash in shame. And so there I was, the guy going hard. By this point, I've worked my way up now. I'm the chief marketing officer of the company. I own 10% of it, all just through sweat equity. They made good on their promise. And I was so broken inside and so unhappy that I was like, I have to leave. I need to go back to filmmaking. I need to do something that in and of itself, like, I will love and be passionate about. And what I realized was the struggle is guaranteed, the success is not. Now, at that time, I was a multimillionaire on paper, but as you well know, being rich on paper is very different than having money in your bank account.
No doubt about it.
So I was rich on paper, I did not feel rich, and so I was like, what am I doing all of this for? So my wife and I talk, and I'm like, look, I know I promised I would make you rich, and I swear to God I will one day, but I'm gonna have to take a step backwards first, because I can't just muscle through like this. I'm just losing so many years of my life. I need to do something that if I'm gonna fail, at least I'm gonna fail loving what I'm doing. She was totally behind me. She said what are now famous words in our marriage. She said, I bet on you. I was like, that means a lot. So I go in and I quit. And I said, look, here's your equity back. I'm not gonna cross the finish line, so I don't think I should get anything for this. So, you know, take it and do your thing. And I'm gonna go to Greece. We were gonna move to Greece, and I'm gonna write, and that's that. And they said, look, we could do this without you, but we don't want to. And so what would it take for us to keep working together? And I laid out a plan of, if whatever I'm gonna be doing next, it's gotta be around value creation, it's gotta be around passion, it's gotta be something that we would love every day, even if we were failing. I wanna build community, I wanna be myself. And I said, look, this thing that we now call social media, wasn't called that back then, but social media, I think is gonna change everything.
What year is that?
This is 2009.
Okay.
So I'm like, I think this is gonna change everything, gonna change the way that people do business. And actually, this probably was a little bit earlier than that. So the next company, I wanna be transparent. I want our real personalities to shine through. I want people to see, like, we actually want good things for them. Yeah. And so that, for 3 very different reasons, became the core of what we wanted to do. And so we founded Quest Nutrition. Everyone told us we were crazy, that we were leaving technology, like the place where people actually get rich, and going into food.
the place where you're in manufacturing, it's going to be small margins, you guys are never going to survive this. And so everyone thought we were dumb, but our thing was, we're never going to make decisions based on profitability again. We're going to be making it based on like actually adding value to people's lives, being passionate about what we do every day, and loving our lives. And so we actually made a promise to each of us, and we said, you're going to enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis, simple as. And so if it's something weird, like when I started doing Inside Quest, fine. Like, even if it's not, like, we don't see the immediate ROI in the business, if you love it and that's a part of what's making you a complete and full human being, then let's do it. And so we got into really crazy stuff, but ended up being amazing because we made that promise to each other. So that was how all of that began. And then we just really lived up to it, about value creation, about not just trying to sell people on something, about building a real community to uplift people. And it just so happened that we had the right product at the right time, marketed in a totally new way. Because of my background in film, we were creating all of our own content in-house. We built an entire studio inside the company. We were shooting everything long before that was like a thing. It was like, we were doing that. And everyone was like, this is crazy.
People don't have enough rules in their life for themselves. So for instance, I get out of bed in 10 minutes or less, doesn't matter. And I don't want to. That's why I have the rule. Because I went through,
calloused your mind.
Literally, I went through a period where I would lay in bed for 3 to 4 hours, awash in shame at my inability to get out of bed. And it just embarrassed me. And so I felt badly about myself. So I wanted to make a change. So I knew that I needed a bright line. So bright line, 10 minutes or less, you get out of bed. As soon as you realize you're awake, that's it. So, and the rule is more specific. It's like, I have to have had at least 5 hours of sleep. But once you put the rule in place, then you just live by it. And that's how you earn credibility. Like right now, I don't feel the way telling you that I want to feel. This is a good moment. He's on my team. I'm pointing at him. This is a good moment. So I'm saying this, and I don't feel good about saying it. Why? Because today, I don't know what happened. I got out of bed in 11 minutes. And I was so
You literally
pissed.
time it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, from waking up to actually physically getting out of the bed?
Correct. My feet must be on the floor, and I must be standing up before it ticks over into the 11th minute. And today, I don't know what happened. I was aware of the time. I knew I needed to get up. And for whatever reason, one of the minutes just went faster than I thought. When I looked back, I was like, damn it. And so
I'm surprised you even made it here today then.
Right? Yeah. So now this comes into like knowing how to handle something like that. Like if you totally fall apart because you don't live up to one of your rules, you're violating another one of my rules, which is don't do anything that doesn't move you towards your goals. So it's like, yes, it is a part of my identity to confess this. So because I'm talking about it, I want to say it now to an audience. It's the only thing that will allow me to reset and be able to feel good about it again, because I don't lie. When I miss it, I own it.
Well, look, if your biggest problem is it took you 11 minutes to get out of bed,
sadly, that's not 10, my biggest problem.
This is a high quality problem.
Right. Yes, very true. But my thing is people don't have the rules. And so I have other rules, for instance. I wear a size 32 pant. That's it. And so
no matter what your waist is.
No. I won't let my waist get out of line with that. So I use the pants as a way to guide. Now, I would go down if I got so lean that I was, a 31. That's not a problem. But I'm not going to allow myself to go up. And it's super tempting, like especially around Christmas. I don't try to hold abs through the winter. So during Christmas, like right now, I do not have abs. So, and I'm totally fine with that. I switch a different part of my mentality. During the holidays, my wife and I definitely celebrate with food. And it's amazing. And I love it the most. So, but if that celebration took me up to like 32s don't fit anymore, I got to cut back because I have a rule. So it's like, that's how I keep myself in a lane. I keep myself from getting into trouble. I know the things that I accept from myself and what I don't accept from myself. And it's all like stated. It's very clear.
Self-reward and self-punishment is really, really important.
Yes.
And I think that if people don't sort of automatically have the guilty thing, which they probably do, it's more a willingness to lean into that and to say, okay, this is actually going to serve me, this is going to work for me. And I actually do wonder sometimes, as somebody who now basically has a profession of giving advice, at least on the one side of what I do. And so I think a lot about like who should actually take my advice, because my advice is not going to lead to a carefree, easy life. Right. Lisa was just saying, she was laying in bed last night thinking about me, and she said, how the f does he do it? Because there's just a level of things that I'm willing to take on, and one, I'm not even sure it's healthy for me, and two, I'm certainly not certain that it's healthy for other people. But what I do know is that I have a level of thrill and pleasurable obsession around it. So for me, it's fun. So when I think about the guilt or the momentary pain of something up, and you talk about me getting better as a speaker, it's like that journey is It is a very simple journey that requires you, though, to really accept that you're not very good at things right now, and that's fine. And so a big key for me has always been to think of my life not through the lens of a moment. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell this to my employees all the time, like, stop judging yourself through the lens of a moment and start judging yourself through the lens of 10 years. If you think of yourself in 10-year increments, like, you will blow your mind. So if you're embarrassed today about where you are, don't compare yourself even to yesterday, which may not soothe that and encourage you to push forward. Think back 10 years. My gut instinct is, unless you've really been treading water, in which case then leverage that pain to never do that again. Yeah. But if you think back to where you were 10 years, chances are, like, you're gonna be blown away with how far you come. And so then it's like, all right, then I'm just gonna focus my gaze 10 years in the future and start saying, what would I have to do to be somewhere where I'd be blown away then with where I'm at now?
Yeah.
But it really does require you to say, okay, I'm the pride that I'm going to establish is actually around my willingness to look at the fact that I'm not good right now today.
If a meteorite were to strike my wife and kill her, I wouldn't blame anybody but me. That is entirely my fault. And I can back that up because people are like, Tom, that's so ridiculous. How could a meteorite striking your wife and killing her be your fault? That's dumb luck, divine providence, like fate, whatever you want to call it. But Jesus, man, it's ridiculous to blame yourself. And then I point out, I'm on the board of the X Prize. At the X Prize, there was a prize presented that would allow us to track near-Earth objects better than we are today. I voted it down. Because I don't think it matters. I don't think that the likelihood is high enough, but it's there. I know that there's an organization right now that already tracks near-Earth objects. I've never sent them a dime of my money. I've never called them to encourage them. I've never sent them an email with ideas, nothing. Now I know all of this stuff exists and I do nothing to stop it from happening. So the only thing that I can say if my wife were killed by a meteorite is I did nothing to stop it. I could have made a different decision and got a different outcome. I need to focus on that to remind myself I can always make a change. I can always do something different and get a different outcome. So if you come in and you disrupt my industry, my first thought is not, F the world, what are you doing? This is so terrible and sinister. We have to stop AI or whatever. My first reaction is, how do I become more adaptive? And people are putting so much energy into thinking like, I'm frail, I'm weak, I have to be protected, that they become frail and weak, when in reality they are not. My favorite quote on the planet is, Darwin is often misquoted as saying it's the strongest of the species that survive. He did not say that. What he actually said was, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but rather the most adaptive to change. That's how humans became the apex predator. We are the most adaptive species on the planet. You can take us anywhere and we will thrive. And it is that ability to adapt mentally and physically that makes us amazing.
Your experience with all the, business experience that you've had, the books you've read, the people that you've spent time with, what do you think is the biggest impediment to people waking up out of this matrix-like existence that's so easy for us to fall prey to?
So I've had a realization recently that I'm not an all lanes driver. There are certain things I've spent so much time thinking about that I'm very good at answering questions, and there are certain things that I'm not. So I'll give you an answer to that question from my very specific lens, which is all about the person. Mm-hmm. So I think that if the things in the world that scare me, the divisiveness scares me. And when I think about what is the individual's creation of that divisiveness, it is, one, a desire to belong to a group intensely, a fear of being ridiculed or emotionally ostracized. And once we know that we have this like sucking need to belong, to be respected, to be liked, you can really begin to decide what are the things that you want to be liked for, respected for. And when those are things that you respect yourself for, then all of a sudden it becomes very easy to do two things: to build something that is born of connection, community, kindness. Not that you're not selfish. I'm very selfish. It just so happens that the more selfish I am, the more I like to connect and help other people. I am very much doing it for me. But it manifests in a way that is humanity neutral, worst case, and I think humanity plus ultimately. So that starts with me having a growth mindset, so that you
you want to see how you're wrong, that you can have these really ferocious ideas, but hold them loosely. Because the moment that your identity is wrapped up in your ideas, you are in real trouble, man. Your identity should be wrapped up in your outcome. What outcome do you want? And are you actually getting that outcome? And then as long as you're not a sociopath with an ugly outcome, like people that get into identity politics and things like that, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, no, for real, the world they imagine is a beautiful world for the people that they love and care about. Okay, fair enough. So I'll just give them that they're trying to do something positive. But when you look at the outcome in terms of how it affects everyone, it starts to break down pretty fast. Like, that's where it really starts to worry me. So that to me says that your identity is based on something that isn't necessarily anti-fragile. It's probably based on something pretty fragile. So to use Nassim Taleb's term, something that is fragile, that's easy to understand. Something that is anti-fragile isn't something that's strong or resilient. Those are still defined by their breaking point. It's just that their breaking point is far away. But ultimately, even something that's strong, it's strong because you think, wow, it can take a lot before it breaks. Something that's anti-fragile, on the other hand, actually grows stronger the more that it's attacked. So, and that doesn't mean you entrench in a position that clearly everybody is saying, like, this is crazy. The only anti-fragile position that I can think of is to be that of the learner. That is truly anti-fragile. So for instance, if you come at me and say that I'm stupid, I'll be like, amazing, in what way? And the reason that I say amazing is because I know that skills make me more powerful. So you've just said that I have a blind spot, which means that I'm less powerful than I could be. And I'll define power because I think it weirds some people out. To me, powerful just means you can close your eyes, imagine a world, a better world than the one that we have today. You can then open your eyes and actually create that world. So that's the kind of power that I'm trying to amass in my life, the ability to impact people at scale in a positive way. So if you're telling me that I'm less powerful than I could be, amazing. I want to know in what way, because once I'm aware of it, then I can address it because I know about myself that I'm willing to accept that I'm inadequate because I know that it's a temporary state. I'm not good at it yet. If I decide that it really does match with my goals and what I want to do, I can get good at it. So it's not ego damaging for you to tell me that I'm not doing something in a way that I could be better. Cool, tell me how. When people don't want to hear that, it's like, they're in a very brittle place. They're being backed into a corner and people lash out and they're backed into a corner. So at an individual level, I would say to everybody, if you feel that, your blood boiling when somebody challenges you, if you feel like a caged animal or like you're being backed into a corner, I promise you 100%, it is not the truth of the world. It is that you have a fragile something, a fragile ego, a fragile belief system. Something in there can break. And because it can break, you're trying to protect it. And the more you try to protect it, the more hardened and potentially violent, vicious, cruel, whatever, that you may become. So when it isn't that, and you're not afraid of that thing breaking because you want to take information in, you want to assess it, doesn't mean you're going to agree. You may take that criticism and go, I actually don't think that's accurate, but I'm really grateful that you gave me that piece of information. And look, intention matters. You can tell when someone's just trying to be a dick. So it's like, you've got to be cognizant enough of that. But when you get to that point where you're leading with, everything is my fault, including the way this person's coming at me. I've done something to make them want to come at me too hard or whatever.
You will only ever get in your life what you absolutely must have, your absolute obsession. Is it you that says your obsessions become your possessions? That is so true. And so getting people to understand that level of like, I must have this, until it is that, like whatever it is, if it's taking care of your wife, if it's doing something rad for your mom, if it's having a beach house, whatever it is, until you need that, like you need oxygen, you won't get it. It is going to demand so much of you. You're going to fall so many times. There's going to be so many obstacles. And unless it must happen in your life, one of them will make you stop. Like you said, you can't be for sale. Like if your will can be bought, it doesn't make you a bad person, man. It really doesn't. Right. But if your will can be bought, you're just not going to get it.
I am ultra ambitious. And I told my wife, the only thing you can never ask me to give up is ambition. And at the same time, my marriage is my highest priority. It's my highest value. So I'm constantly balancing is she asking me to give up my ambition, or is she just reminding me that we've hit a moment where I need to put it first and I need to stop working for a day or 2 days, whatever, and really just give her my undivided attention. And as long as it doesn't feel like she's actually asking me to get rid of my ambition, then it's like, yeah, of course, because that is what I want for myself. It is the thing that's brought me the most value in my life, is my marriage, for sure.
Where does that ambition come from then?
I don't know. It's the one thing I wonder about in terms of like, okay, we're not blank slates. Was I just given ambition, like at a neurological level? Maybe, certainly possible. I've made it bigger and more all-consuming throughout my life. That is for sure. I have just enough stubbornness in me that growing up, when people told me I couldn't do something, part of my like, every time someone told me I couldn't do it, I would say, well, I'm going to do it bigger. You can't even do this, let alone that. Then I'm going to do this. And, we ultimately get to I'm building the next Disney. So it's like
So it's externally driven then?
Some of it, for sure. But some of it is everything in my life is driven by how something makes me feel. And I really believe all you have in this world is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. So in that dark, quiet night, when you're all alone, do you feel good or not? And so I steer by that. And when I start losing sleep because something is stressing me out or I think I handled something poorly, I have to correct that.
The number one question I get, and I get this question so much you can't imagine, how do I find my passion? The good news is, passion is not something that's handed to you. It is not a lightning bolt moment. It's another nice, simple mathematical equation. First of all, you need to identify your areas of interest. Everybody's interested in something. And I find the big problem is people stop themselves because they say, yeah, well, the thing that I'm interested in couldn't possibly be a business. So let's take video games back in the 80s. Back when everybody thought that video games were a joke, you're ruining your brain, it's like intellectual candy, kids get off the computer, go play outside, Nintendo's a joke, it's ridiculous. And then we have an entire industry now that's born up around video games that has made untold numbers of millionaires. I met one of the founders of Riot Games that created League of Legends. The guy is like, I don't know, 31, maybe younger, I mean, just crazy. They do $1 billion in revenue from microtransactions of things that are not essential to play the game. The game is totally free to play. You don't need to pay for anything. Imagine that for a second. You're in an industry where they don't need to buy anything to get full use of your game, and yet you do over $1 billion in revenue because they said, I love this. I like being around games. I like the competition of it. I think it's amazing. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to be inventive. I'm going to look for areas to add value. And so they have. And more people now watch esports, the finale of League of Legends, than watch the finales, I think, of all major sports combined. It's crazy. They fill arenas. It's absolutely bonkers. But that was somebody who said, this is something I love. It's something I want to be around. It is an area of interest. And I don't care if other people tell me that it can't be a business. It's what I want to be around. With enough ingenuity and enough forethought into what actually can be a business, because some things can't, you can really do something with something that's an interest. All right, so an interest, you need to gain mastery in it. During the process of gaining mastery, you'll find out whether you actually like that thing enough to become great at it. It is my belief, whatever it is you set out to do as a business, there should be one litmus test. You should be able to ask and affirmatively answer the following question. Do I want to know more about this than anyone else in the world? Don't get into something unless you plan to be the best. That's my piece of advice. I know that's not going to sit well with everybody. But if you want to have the passion to make something big, to make big change, it's got to be something that you believe in beyond reasonable doubt. It's got to be something you've just got to make happen. So ask yourself, do I want to know more about this than anyone else? Because you're going to have to get better at it than anyone else if you want to be excellent and deliver on the promise.
All right, there are very concrete habits that you can use, that I have used. Once you get your mind in the right place, once you believe that it can happen, this is what I did. I worked out. Why? Because it helped me gain control of my mind. One, it was micro-credibility with myself. Every day I said I was going to do something, I did it. Two, when you're suffering and you're willing to fight through it, you tell yourself a story that you're willing to pay the price to become what you want to become. And also, and this may be the most important reason each and every one of you should start working out, and it has nothing to do with living longer, because we could get hit by a meteorite, who knows? So I'm not even worried about that, but I am worried about this. When you watch your body transform, you get the loudest signal from your subconscious that you can change. That you can change anything you want, that you can change your bicep, your tricep, your quad, whatever it is that you want. Something that you literally could not do the day before, you can do today. And your mind sees that that's true. Your mind sees that something you couldn't pick up yesterday, you can pick up today. And it begins to ask itself, well, if that's possible, then what else is possible? Now, for me, finding my center was also a very important thing. So I work out first. The next thing I do without fail is meditate. I do a just breathe meditation where I'm simply trying to calm my mind. Then I do what I call thinkitating. During meditating, I get into an alpha wave state brain pattern, which enhances creativity and unique connections. I'm not worried about whether I'll ever think a unique thought. I am simply interested in the unique connections that I will make that no one else before me or after me will ever make because their circumstances are different than mine. And that, to me, is what makes each of us a beautiful snowflake. Is we're all going to make connections that other people might not make. And so during thinkitating, I take advantage of a problem I'm trying to solve. I smash it together with my alpha wave state, and I see what comes out of it. I read obsessively, because I believe in one simple math equation: ideas in equal ideas out. And then I keep a list of the most important things I'm trying to accomplish. If you're trying to become something, you need to know what that something is.
You don't get skills because it looks good on a resume. You get skills because it lets you do the thing you want to do. So let's use sports as an example. It's just all too easy not to use it. So if you're in poverty and you're Lionel Messi and you realize, actually, I think, who's the other one?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo, thank you. He was in the grips of poverty. And nice, that's perfect. So Cristiano Ronaldo, in the grips of poverty, realizes that playing soccer is a way out for him. And so he goes and gets the skills. Why? Because if he can win on the soccer field, then he can actually elevate his family out of poverty. Like when you see that trail, it goes back to the Nietzsche quote. If you have a why, you can survive almost any how. So how am I going to get there? The amount of work that Cristiano Ronaldo has put in to become one of the greatest, if not the greatest football player of all time, it's inhuman. Anybody else would look at it and say, nope, not willing to do that. And fair enough. But it was somebody who said, if I gain these skills, it will let me dribble around people, score when other people can't score, galvanize a team around me, leverage it to be wanted by teams, to turn into financial resources, to make me famous so that I can get brand deals and things like that. All the things that he would need to do to pull himself out of poverty. Like this stuff isn't an accident. It's about skill acquisition. So there's another kid that had the same dream. I'm going to use soccer to get me out of poverty and did nothing about it. Therefore did not have the skills, therefore could not elevate their family out of poverty, and looks at it like, well, this is all circumstance. It's not circumstance. It's cause and effect. It's how much energy do you put into actually gaining the skills, and did you gain them? Or did you just put in the energy and the effort thinking that should be enough to gain it, but you didn't actually gain them? Mm-hmm. So this is what, it's like the gift I want everybody to receive is you can get good at anything you set your mind to. But do you actually set your mind to it? Do you have that inhuman level of follow through? Do you keep pushing and fighting long after it stopped being fun, deep into boredom, because you have a why? You know why you're doing what you're doing, and you're just driving towards that. And when you have that, you can accomplish this extraordinary stuff. But I really think people now are doing it for the gram. You're doing it for the gram. You want to go to that thing and do it because it's like, oh, this is going to look good on my gram. And look, I've done that 100 times. I get it. But at the core of my existence is not that. At the core of my existence is I'm going to, in the amount of time that I have, I'm going to be acquiring skills. I've always said that the most sinister thing about excuses is that they're real. Like you really do have reasons not to be successful, but now what? Like now what? Now what are you going to do? Like I remember I was giving a talk at Google, and one of the guys happened to be African American, and he said, Tom, do you think it's harder for me as a black person in America to succeed? And I said, that seems patently self-evident. Even just accepting that humans tend to gravitate towards those that look like them, what I call the school of fish phenomenon. You always see the same kind of fish with the same kind of fish. So being a minority, just by definition, is going to make things harder.
If you haven't read Angela Duckworth's book on grit, I highly recommend it. It is amazing. I'll give you some of the key takeaways. The biggest part about grit is sustained effort over time. If you lose interest quickly in something, once or twice, no big deal. It is what it is. You realize that it wasn't your thing. But if you lose interest over and over and over and over and over, and you always only enjoy the first 6 months of a business, and then you want to move on, you lose interest very quickly, You need to work on developing your grit, being able to sustain that over time. Because building any business, you're going to encounter hard things. You need to be able to do those hard things. Focusing on the hard things. In fact, I try to start every day with one of the hardest things to get it out of the way, to remind myself that I'm willing to attack that. All right, you want to be able to persist through boredom and suffering. I told you guys that's one of my superpowers. Long after everybody else gives up because they're not having fun anymore, I'm still there banging away at it. That's really, really important in order to create momentum, to keep things moving, and to finally get them across the finish line. A lot of people are able to get something to the 50-yard line or maybe even the 1-yard line, but they just can't quite push it over the finish line. And that is the difference between somebody who's a wantrepreneur and somebody who ends up being successful the way that they want. They can get it across the finish line. All right, learn to tell the difference between a lack of grit and genuine disinterest. If you're not interested in something, you need to move on quickly. But like I said, if that becomes serial, you may have a problem. And if you're only good in the beginning, that's the sign that you lack grit.
Only execution matters. Burn that into your nervous system. Get a tattoo. Do whatever you need to do to remind yourself, only execution matters. Thinking about it, feeling good about it, those are awesome. But if you have a vision of something you're trying to do, become, whatever, and you don't execute against it, and I don't need you to want to build a big business. If you tell me you want to be the greatest parent of all time, then I'm going to ask you, what are you doing to execute on that goal? What are you doing? How do you define it? What are your deliverables? What are the metrics by which you're judging yourself? And by the way, if you don't want a grand goal, you don't need one. But then say, what I'm trying to do is get centered. I'm trying to experience happiness. Even that, you can begin to look at ways that you can improve that. Now, I very much subscribe to the theory that the human animal is an active species, meaning it will forever be moving forward. I think that's a good thing. It's one of the most exciting things in my life. And I have 3 fears. 1, brain damage. That freaks me out. 2, losing my wife because, damn, that woman's cool. And then 3, I don't ever want to feel like I've hit the end of what I can do. I always want to feel like there's something more that I can learn and grow into.
What is that mindset of constantly working on yourself without judging yourself to a deeper level, without doing it in a way that always pulling you down, but always pushing you up? And you're doing that in your relationship. Whenever I watch relationship theory, I think the conversations you and Lisa have, incredible. So it seems like you're doing it in all areas of your life. Which area did it start in? Which areas did it evolve to? Let's just break that whole...
Yeah, so let's answer that question.
Yeah.
So where did it start and where did it go? So the honest answer is that, like many of the most amazing things in my life, they were born of misery. And I was deeply and profoundly unhappy, dissatisfied with who I was, what I was capable of, where I was in life, all of it. I was just really unhappy about it. Now, the one good thing is I've always met things like that with, and what can I do? And I have a bias towards action. And then I've cultivated that bias towards action, which is how it's gotten extreme and is permeated into every area of my life. Okay, so it starts with it's this dark place. This, like I said, I failed in film school. I didn't fail in film school. I graduated second in my class, but there was a failure that was so emotionally catastrophic that everybody else would have been like, oh, you got a B, like what's the problem? Sure, I got a B in the class, but I didn't walk away with a thesis film that I could use to get a job as a filmmaker. So for me, it was like, whoa, I just lost massively. So I'm, in this very dark place. I'm broke as the day is long. I can't afford furniture. I literally sit on the floor in my unfurnished apartment like that. Just it's a normal phase that people go through, but then put on top of that I'm feeling down and stuck, like I don't know where I'm gonna go. Propensity towards action kicks in. I start reading. I'm learning about the brain, figuring out how much of this can I change. I realize I can change it. And then that change felt so good. And even let's do a thought exercise. This is for people listening because you're already there. But for anybody listening, and you're listening to Jay because you want to get there, you see something, which by the way, you feel when you're with him, it is real. And I love that about you. But like this sense of peace, like the normal slings and arrows of life, he's found a way to deal with. I won't say that he doesn't have them, but he's found a way to deal with it. And that's what you're looking for. So going into that, it's like, if you are in a dark place and you hear, change is real, change is possible, doesn't that lift your mood? Don't you want that to be true? And once you allow it, because you have to allow it, once you allow that to lift your mood and you're like, I feel better just by thinking I can change. That was huge for me. That was like moment one was when I realized I actually can change. So this thing that feels like a death threat, this like smothering cloud of just like despair, it can clear away. And it immediately, and it's not like, oh, it went from gray skies to blue skies. It wasn't that immediate, but it literally immediately a lighter load just because I realized I can change. So I was like, whoa, I can change. None of this is a death sentence. That's so like just amazing. That was enough to get me going. And people are always looking for, how do I have that energy? I'm depressed. I'm down on myself. How do I get the energy to push through? Man, you've got to find a way to find energy in that. You can change. So whatever position you're in right now, you can change no matter what it is, no matter how horrific, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done. Like there is a way out from under it. But part of it is allowing that sense of lightness to be there. So I allowed it.
The important thing here to note is that everyone needs an ego. Everyone needs self-esteem. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. And the crazy thing, when you really stop and think about suicide, and this is a new obsession of mine, if you stop and think about suicide, what has happened? That person believes, falsely, but they believe that they'll never be happy again, that they'll never feel good about themselves again. And that's why it's referred to as a permanent solution to a temporary problem, because that will pass. But in that moment, it feels like it couldn't ever go away. So we need to find things that make us feel good about who we are. Because when you lose a sense of feeling good about who you are, life truly feels hopeless. So that's critical. And people often talk about, to stay away from an ego, to not pride yourself on things. But I'm telling you, that person prides themselves on not having an ego. And so it becomes what you pride yourself on is absolutely incredible. Now, don't make the mistake that I made. I used to want to be smart. When I talked about being the king of remedial jobs, it was because I wanted to put myself in situations where I was the smartest person in the room. And in doing that, I was always going into smaller and smaller rooms. But it felt so good to be right. And the problem was I was wrong a lot of the times. Now, when this one finally came to a head, my business partners, who were far smarter than I am in terms of IQ, processing data, which I define IQ as your ability to process data rapidly. They could process data very rapidly. And we would get into arguments and I would always lose, and it was very frustrating. And I remember one day, finally, I actually convinced them to do something my way. And I realized, I just won the argument, but I know I'm wrong. And so now what? I've gotten what I thought I wanted. I finally won this victory. If I don't feel smart myself, at least I'm getting reflected back to me that I've solved the problem. And now I feel totally stuck. Because if I really want to move towards my goal of getting rich, it does not help to do things that I know are against the company just to be right. And in that moment, I realized what I had to do was switch my self-esteem from being right to pursuing the right answer faster than anyone else, and then putting energy behind that and being like, oh my gosh, Timmy came up with the idea, or it was Sally, and Sally, oh my gosh, it's amazing, and giving them so much energy to try to see it through because that's the right idea. And then I began to develop my reputation of being the guy that even if 3 seconds before that I'd been fighting for another idea, once I realized I was wrong, I would admit it. And it's amazing what reputation you can build around that, and it is way more effective for business.
What is the meditation process specifically look like?
Dead simple. So I use what I call Just Breathe. So it was born of Mark Divine's box breathing. At least he was the one that introduced it to me. So he preaches do it 4 equal parts. So you've got the inhale is the exact same length as the inhale hold, exact same length as the exhale, exact same length as the exhale hold. Now doing that made me feel out of breath. I just felt weird. So what I started doing was I'm going to maximize the pleasure in each part of the breath cycle. So for me, it happens to be a sort of medium inhale, a very short inhale hold, a rapid exhale. I just let the air out. And then a very prolonged exhale hold. Mm-hmm. And that rhythm feels awesome. And I do that for 10 or 15 minutes and I can get into an alpha wave state. I feel calm, creative. It just feels awesome. That's one of those things that people that haven't tried meditation or tried it but never got to the part where it feels awesome, my heart breaks for them. It is a tool I rejected for so many years because it felt wussy to me. And remember, I'm the guy that had to learn to toughen up. So I feared that was like backwards momentum. And so finally, when Mark Divine looked at me and was basically like, stop being an idiot and try this. And he's like this tough ass Navy SEAL. Yeah. I thought, all right, I'm going to try. And then it changed my life.
I switched my self-esteem from being right and being smart to being the learner who was always willing to admit that he was wrong, identify the right answer, give credit to the person who thought of it, and put more energy behind it than anyone else. And that became my driver. Now, what did I do with that driver? I turned that change in attitude, along with my co-founders at Quest Nutrition, into building, as Vishen said, the second fastest growing company in North America, valued at over $1 billion. Every financial dream I'd ever had in my life come true. But at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered had nothing to do with the money. And it had everything to do with, we set out to build a business around value creation. We set out to actively ask one question: what would we do and love every day, even if we were failing? And that, for 3 very different reasons, ended up being attacking the pandemic of the body, trying to help people live a more beautiful life. And there were times where putting that value first meant that we did things that were less profitable. There were times where we put that value first and it was outright stressful to the company. But that was the driver. And that was the thing that actually allowed us to grow, because people could feel that this company was different. They could feel that we weren't after the sale. They could feel what we wanted was to help. And in today's world, leading with that, as you guys know, if you're at this conference, can have tremendous rewards.
If you're trying to march down a path of self-improvement without clarity, without a terrifying level of clarity, you're never going to make it. So start there. What do you want exactly? What skill, what trait, what ability, what belief, what are you trying to make yours? So once you identify that.
Notice he did not say a thing there. Like you said, right? Like you said, what ability, what trait, what quality. You didn't ever say what house, what car.
Lambo,
yeah, right. It's important.
Yeah,
because I think that's too much. I mean, when I remember first getting yourself, sorry to cut you off.
Please.
I'm saying this because I think it's such an important point that you made, that you did not let that word even come into a list, and you named like 7 things and it didn't come in. Because when I started self-improvement, so much of what I heard in the West was always about a vision board of having stuff. And it was like, put a picture of that ideal house, put a picture of that car. And I've always struggled with that being the object of obsession. So I'm glad you didn't bring it up. And you can carry on or go on that or whatever.
Yeah, well, part of it is because I certainly don't want to be disingenuous. Like, there are also material things that I chase and am inspired by and all that, for sure. I just come at it from a like, what's the skill that I'm going to need, even if that ultimately is where I want to get. It's like, all of that stuff people will find, and God, I hope people have heard this 1,000 times. It's so transient. It is never going to fulfill you, right? But it's still fun. Go ahead, chase it, have fun. Like, I get it. But you will ultimately come back to something more meaningful, for sure. So once you know what you want, you have that level of clarity. Now it's about, okay, where am I in that? And that's where it requires that you have self-awareness to know where you are in developing that skill. I love inspiration and motivation, but it is the neurological equivalent of candy. It's rad, it has its place, but everyone, because those just happen to be fleeting neurological states, you just have to find something that's way more grounded. You need a mission, you need a grand why, you need to know what it is. And this is not a discovery, it's a thing you decide. I decided. Now, because I tell it as a story, people think, oh, it was unavoidable. He meets this kid, Rashawn, and that coupled with all the people that he worked with at Quest, it's sort of inevitable that he decides that he's going to build impact theory and try to change culture to give everyone an empowering mindset. Yeah, well, literally a year before I decided to found impact theory, my mission in life was to end metabolic disease. So it's like, you decide and then you point yourself at something. Nothing is ever going to feel right. Like, this is what I was put on earth to do. It won't feel that way until about a year or 2 years after you've been saying that's what you're going to do, that's what you're committed to, and actually acting in accordance with it. And then you'll be like, yeah, this actually is my mission.
Be transparent. It's a new world order. Man, when I was coming up, you didn't be transparent. You put a marketing message out. You spun that. Like, you tried to be as close to the truth as you could, but you didn't worry about transparency. But these days, consumers expect transparency. They want to know who you are. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know what it means to support you, because it's not enough that your product is good. They want to know that your company stands for something. But it's also incredibly meaningful to your employees. You want to keep top quality talent around for a long time, you want to make sure that they know what's going on in the company.
Somebody that wants to completely transform who they are, you have to change your identity. So who am I? I'm the smart guy. And that's how I thought of myself. Like I thought of myself as being smart. And then the life slapped me around and I realized, oh wow, I'm really actually not that smart. I just grew up in a small town. And so in my small town, I was smart enough. I was still never the smartest. But then I moved to LA and all of a sudden people smarter than me were just like growing on trees. So I was like, wow, I really don't feel smart anymore. So that was like a hard adjustment. And so then putting myself into these smaller and smaller rooms was the solution. But I realized that I had been sort of taken as a default value intelligence. Maybe it was the family I grew up in or the movies I watched, I don't know. But I just had this default that being smart was the thing everyone should chase. And then I realized, oh, I can actually change that. Not everybody values themselves for that. And so I could swap that out with something else. And I want people to understand that those things that are just deeply within you that seem as if they are innate human qualities, challenge them all. Some things you won't be able to change, but some things are far more malleable than you thought. And a lot of what you value comes down to what you repeat. And so just repeating myself, I'm the learner, I'm the learner, I'm the learner. It began to be my identity and then rewarding myself emotionally when I did that, repeating it, rewarding, repeating, rewarding. Then it's like through that repetition cycle, it actually starts to be meaningful that you're the learner. And by the way, I was telling everybody, I'm the learner. I see myself as the learner. I'm the learner. I'm the learner. And because I was telling people, then I really felt the sense of congruence with wanting to act like the learner. And so when you say you're going to do something and you do it, you earn self-credibility. So now I've got this loop going. I said I was the learner. Here I am reading this book. Here I am being willing to admit when I'm wrong, seeking out knowledge, looking for disconfirming evidence. Like I get to feel good about myself for that.
Take this superhero, Iron Man. The movie franchise is off the charts. And what is it? At the same time that you have people occupying Wall Street, you have them celebrating one of the richest people on the planet. Why? Because he dresses up like a superhero and he tries to save the world. People don't mind money. People don't mind that you want to create a beautiful lifestyle for you and your family. They don't mind people getting rich, but they care a lot about how you do it. They care a lot about what you do with it once you have it. Nobody likes Scrooge McDuck. Don't ever leak a photo of you swimming in your money. I promise it will not go well. But if you have a vision for how your company can make the world a better place and you use social media to allow people to touch and be evangelized by your brand, if you're thinking, how can I make a product or a service that actually makes the lives better of the people that work at the company and the people who buy the product? If that's the question that you're asking, man, they will rally around you. And we live in this amazing time and you've got to take advantage of that. And it really freaks me out when people think that we're like either the social movement is cresting or it's behind us. It's only gaining steam. The TV's going away. The mobile phone is becoming the television. Like these changes are a one-way ticket to difference. Now, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I just know it's not going to stop. And it sure as hell isn't going to go in reverse.
Only in the process of gaining mastery will you find passion. So to me, passion comes out of, it's kind of like love. I don't believe that love, it needs a different word. Unrequited love is a very different neurological state than reciprocal love. So if you have unrequited love, to me, that's something you really, like I love singing, but I'm shit at it. So I have unrequited love. I love singing, but singing does not love me back. Now, I could go down the process of gaining mastery, and then I may find that I have a real passion for it, because part of it's going to become, oh, I'm gaining this skill, and this skill of singing allows me to have an emotional impact not only on myself, but on other people. I can make them feel good. I can change their mood. I can tell a story, whatever it is that you want to do with the music. But when you're able to do that, and you're truly good at it, and it has the outcome that you desire, then it can become a passion. But to get a passion, you've got to fight through just ridiculous amounts of boredom, fatigue, everything to truly become good enough at it that it's a skill that has utility.
People have got to reject this notion that they have to be protected from the outside and putting all their time and energy into that. Be the fucking change you want to see in the world. If you want to see people strong enough to withhold a better weight, then don't worry about trying to fix systems. Just can get tough. Watch how people respond to you. Watch how your kids look up to you. Watch how your family members look up to you. Watch how people turn to you and want help. We have an innate desire to get strong. We don't have an innate desire to have something else protect us. All of us. If two buttons, man. One of them is you're such a badass, nothing can ever hurt you. You get it. You know how to figure it out. You fight your way out of anything. Or a magic fairy will follow behind you and just waft things away. The terrifying thing is, this button, the magic fairy, is going to get pressed a lot more than this button. But this button, no one dies of suicide with this button. This button, race towards suicide and depression. And if you want to know why we're having a pandemic of that, and I don't want to cheapen it because it's largely microbiome and there's all kinds of health things that are going on, I'm not taking that away. But on the mental side of what's driving a lot of people not believing in that is we're just culturally reinforcing that like we're stuck, we're trapped, there's nothing we can do, that people don't understand, the fulfillment has to be earned. You can't tell someone to just love themselves. You have to tell them how they earn self-respect. You have to tell them that doing hard that you don't want to do and doing it anyway, that's exactly how you gain self-worth. You can't just tell someone to feel worthy. And man, I want to more than the next person. Like I spend an inordinate amount of my time every week talking to a camera, trying to help people to touch their lives for real. Like my wife and I made so much money, we could have actually bought an island and retired and never worked again. But that's not what I want. Like I want that fulfillment. I want to do hard shit. I want to touch people's lives. I want to lift them up. I actually want to transform and change them.
The single most important part in learning to be honest with yourself is to accept that you must have self-esteem. And the problem is most people build their self-esteem around something stupid. So most people build their self-esteem around being right, being good, being smart, being worthy, and they see all of those as permanent traits. And so anything that challenges them being smart, which is my big one, oh God, even to this day, if I really want to get into a bad place, I'll just go hang around people that are just legitimately smarter than me and then focus on how cool being smart is. Now I can be around them when I value myself for being the learner, but the second I let myself slip into just wanting to be cool for being smart, then being around those people is like getting kicked in the face. It sucks, man. And so I went through this phase in my life that I call the king of remedial jobs phase. And so this is post film school, post like realizing that I don't have talent. I just need to be smart, man. I just need to build myself back up by being smart. And so I would apply for jobs. Like I sold video games retail, and I sold insurance door to door. I did anything that I could where I knew that the person interviewing me at some point during the interview was going to say, why are you applying for this job? Like, you're too smart for this. And be like, I'm right where I need to be, which is crazy and sad, but absolutely true. And so I did that for a couple years. And in that phase, I just didn't want my intelligence to be challenged. So flash forward now, I'm working with these two entrepreneurs. They hire me as a copywriter. I'm in an entrepreneurial environment for the first time. And they're clearly smarter than me. That isn't even up for debate. And I'm arguing with them for this idea because I needed to win. I couldn't take another time where it's like, they're smarter than me. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna win on this idea. And somewhere in the argument, I realized I was wrong. And there was a voice in my head screaming, you're wrong, dude. You are wrong. You know you're wrong. Shut up. Like, stop pushing for this. What are you doing? And I kept going, and I finally like whittled them down, and they finally just gave up. And so they said, yep, we'll do it your way. Fine, whatever. And right then and there, it's the one time in my life that was truly a lightning rod moment where my life can be divided before and after. And that moment was realizing that I was telling everybody that I wanted to get rich, but the way I was acting was like I just wanted to feel smart. And I thought, hey, no judgment. I'm totally cool. Whichever it is, like we can craft a life where that will be wonderful. So if what you really want is to just be smart and to feel smart all the time, you have to quit. You've got to get out of this environment because they make you feel stupid all the time. And that's not a great place to be. Feeling badly about yourself all the time for any reason, even if it's self-inflicted, it's not a bad scenario or it's not a good scenario. You've got to get out of it. So I was like, okay, so that's option one, get out of this scenario, go back to being the king of remedial jobs. Or if you actually want to get rich, start acting in accordance with it. Start making decisions based on that. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to give up my self-esteem. I'm going to have to like stop worrying about feeling good about myself. And I was like, ooh, that is clearly a losing proposition. There is no way to come in and feel horrible every day and think that I will have the energy to see this through. So I was like, God, what else could I do? And I was like, well, I guess I could build my self-esteem around something that is sort of impervious to being around people that are smarter than me. And what would that be? Being the learner. And I thought, okay, well, I could choose to do that. I could choose to build my self-esteem around being not right, but finding the right answer. Not being smart, but working hard to learn. And so that became just like the core of my existence. I decided in that moment, I'm going to start valuing myself for how rapidly I can admit when I'm wrong. How much I learn, how much time and energy I put into learning. And once I switched that and I switched my identity and my behaviors around to being the learner, then all of a sudden, everything changed. And that's when I went on hockey stick growth, because all of a sudden, if we were arguing and I realized you were right, I'd be like, dude, he's right. You're totally right. I see it. Oh my God, thank you so much. And so I started earning a reputation of I never just backed into a corner. I never argued for something just because it was my idea. I was legitimately on the hunt to find the right answer. And so now I'm getting the internal feedback of, hey, you said that you were going to always focus on being the learner. You're doing it. You said you'd always admit when you're wrong. And I would try to shorten that timeline down. So I wasn't like taking an hour to finally admit it, or even 3 minutes, that I was trying to get to it like, dude, if I realize I was wrong, 3 seconds, 30 seconds max, like I'm, just finally saying it. Look, you're totally right. I'm with you. Yep, I see it. And then the world was like, whoa, working with this guy is awesome. He's not trying to take credit for other people's ideas. He will change on what he was saying in a heartbeat when he fights for what he believes in, but the second you can convince him, he's convinced, and then he moves on. And it just became a really awesome environment.
The reason that Quest went so fast wasn't just because we had done something to our minds and gotten to the point where we were so angry that we were going to push this forward no matter what. It was understanding the timing of the marketplace and the technologies that were emerging. And the technology that was emerging in 2009, when we first started thinking about the company, everybody thought Facebook was a joke. Everybody thought it was a huge distraction. And what we understood was it was just a megaphone. We didn't pass judgment on it. We just knew it was a megaphone. And it was a free megaphone. And if we could give them reason to say something good within a couple of minutes of an interaction with us, they could have a global audience and tell people about that. So we saw that the timing was right there. And we also understood that people want to have impact.
How do you think about failure then?
Not trying. For me, like to not have the audacious goal, to not really give it a real shot. And I know I'm constantly gut checking myself for, am I playing at building the next Disney, or am I actually building the next Disney? That means something to me. So if I get to the end of this and the world is clapping for me and they're like, oh my God, you're so amazing and look how far you went.
I don't think people have researched cognitive behavioral therapy nearly enough. Pattern interrupting is like everything. Get better at pattern interrupting than LeBron is at shooting. Like you just have to be a ninja. Like you've got to be so hardcore. You've got to know about how to do that with yourself. So if I have a negative thought that's recurring, I just tell myself, nope, you can't think this anymore. So, and every time it will come up, because I can't stop myself from it popping up into my conscious mind, but you absolutely can control how the next thought goes. The next thought can be, and here's what I will do with a negative thought. That's so rad. I'm so glad this negative thought appeared in my mind, because that reminds me to be grateful for the fact that I'm friends with Jay Shetty, or that reminds me to be grateful for the fact I have a marriage that is so insanely cool that like I legitimately some days have to stop myself from just curling up in a ball with her and just chilling all fucking day. Like that is, I'm super stoked. Even now, Jay, it's so funny. I had to stop and think, wait, I'm going through this list of things that I'm grateful for. What started this? And I'm like, oh yeah, the negative thought. Like that actually just happened to me right now. Yeah. So you can imagine in real life when like you train yourself, every time the negative thought kicks up, don't sit in the emotion of the negativity that it will bring. Instead, use it as a habit loop trigger to think about something you're grateful for. And at first, it feels so awkward, and it's like the negative thought just keeps coming back. But if you're diligent and suddenly negative thoughts become a habit loop trigger to gratitude, to positivity, to repeating your rules about, I don't allow myself to think things that tear me down, so I'm not gonna think about that. Even just saying that crowds out that thought and telling other people that, hey, this is what you're doing. It is unbelievable. But this is why I'm saying I'm literally just a patchwork of all these like tools and techniques that allow me to protect myself from negative self-talk, from anxiety, from depression. I don't think I've ever officially been in depression, but I've been super close enough to know the feeling of staring into the void, which I don't think is accurate, it feels like the void is collapsing in around you and just everything is meaningless and it is all utterly hopeless. And I've had just enough of a glimpse of how hopeless that is to get where people are in those moments. But anxiety, that I've been in the thick of. So that one I know, and I've used CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to do interrupts on that. I have a very well-developed negative voice, so I have had to use tools and techniques to stop that. I never would have become a successful entrepreneur if I couldn't learn to self-soothe. And at one point, that was what I would have said was my secret power. That my secret power in business was I can self-soothe faster than anybody else.
You're big on learning a lot of skill sets, right? What would you say has the highest, what skill set has the highest upside, highest return?
The baseline thing people have to have is emotional resilience. So you have to, and this to me is a skill, you have to learn how to emotionally recalibrate. So when I was the kid in the server room and there was a whole bunch of people farther ahead in their entrepreneurial journey than I, and they all heard the same message about you can be a partner, and none of them did anything with it, I started asking, why aren't they doing anything with it? And I realized the answer was I could self-soothe faster than they could. And so, yeah, it hurt when I was told I was an idiot. That really sucked, especially hearing it from someone you really respect. But I decided to not spin out of control, not waste 3 days being hurt by it, but instead to recenter and just ask, are they right? Because if they're right, there's something to learn here. And if they're not right, just move on. And if they are right, learn the lesson. And so I just slowly started collecting it and the lessons. And the image I started thinking was, whenever somebody throws an insult at you, you have two options. You can let it hit you in the head, or you can raise your defenses and deflect it. And your defenses are the psychological immune system. They're real, and I'm not making that up. So all of us have this thing that comes to our aid when somebody says something that hurts you. Then you're like, oh, well, they're mean anyway, they're a jerk, they're a bully, whatever, I don't have to take them seriously. And so that makes you feel better, and you believe maybe that they're being cosmically punished in some way. Being a bully is its own punishment and all that. So, and like that allows you to relax. And they've done studies that show people with the highest level of self-delusion are the happiest. So there really is something to it. But the people with the highest level of self-delusion are usually not the ones that go the farthest, because they don't stop to recognize where they really are, to own the pain of that. So I thought, okay, instead of raising my defenses, I'm going to lower my defenses. I'm going to let that rock hit me in the head, because at my feet now is actually a nugget of gold. And I'm going to pick up that nugget of gold and form it a lesson that the person is throwing at me. And here's the thing to realize. When people really come at you, they're really trying to hurt you, they have sinister intent, they're going to come at you with something that's true. Nobody comes at you with the stuff that's not real. They're going to hit you with like the thing that you're the most secure about in the world. So even the people with the gravest of intent are the ones that are giving you the most powerful gift, because you may be blind to it, or maybe you didn't want to acknowledge it. But if you can let it hit you as much as it hurts, then bend down, pick it up, and learn from it, now you can do something.
If you want to see the recent one-on-one interview I did with Tom Bilyeu, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I was worth $2 million on paper, and I'd never been more unhappy in my life.